This one's a little different for me. I can do this with a real easy smile. When I first moved to Watford City, I guess it was in '68, and we started running on the reservation. I heard a lot about Jim Connolly. And we were running on the reservation. We didn't run cattle right at that time with Connolly's, but we ran with their cousin Murphy's. And so got to know him well over the years. I don't know how many in here knew Jim personally. So when I go like this and look with kind of squint my eyes and look at you kind of skeptically and spit snooze on the floor, you'd probably recognize him. But I'd heard a lot about Jim before I ever met him. When I first met him, it was kind of the way I pictured he would be. He's a big man, he was at ease on a horse, and he was at ease amongst cattle or people. I think he was just as comfortable with a bunch of bankers and politicians in a room and a suit on as he was on the reservation with a bunch of cowboys and Indians having lunch at a roundup dinner or riding through a cattle sorting pairs. When I first met him, we were sorting pairs on Moccasin Creek on the reservation, Fort Berthold, and I hadn't been down there too long. And I think I can honestly say he was a little bit leery of our outfit because we were Democrats. So that was a little hard for Jim to take. And when Jim would ride up to you and ask you something, he'd cock his head to the side, and squint his eyes at you a little bit, kind of smile and spit some snooze out, and wait for an answer. I was pretty damn young. And when Jim asked me something, I wanted to make sure I gave the right answer, even if I didn't agree with it. I didn't want to argue with him. Turned out that we had an awful lot in common. And the things Jim fought for his whole life are things that most of us ranchers are still fighting for today. He was probably one of the first guys to realize that the consumers are really the final judge of whatever we're doing here on the ranches. I don't care what country you're in or what state you're in or what political party you're at. Jim was the first to realize that the consumer is the ultimate judge of how we're doing in our business. He was one of the first in North Dakota to experiment with crossbreeding. He was one of the first ones to push for more cattle feeding in North Dakota, something that people have been doing ever since then. He was one of the guys that started that. His ranch was one of the original ones that started brand inspection across North Dakota. He was against government overreach. And although the guy had only 1 year at high school education, he probably prided himself more on fighting for education, realizing that we all needed that. I think that was something that a lot of people didn't realize about him. And he realized, and we're going back a lot of years here, that we got to trade our beef worldwide, but he was always kind of skeptical of the imported beef, that it wouldn't be of the quality, that we had to worry about disease and sickness. He was one of the guys that really realized that. One of my fondest memories of Jim is at one of the Stockman's convention. I was one of the younger guys at the discussion, but we were in a watering hole that was across the street from any of the meetings. And I was at a table with Grandpa Jack Murphy, and Jack Chase, who became the chief brand inspector. I'm not sure if he was at that time or not. Alfred Hansen was one of the guys sitting at the table, and we called him Uncle Jim. I know if I'd had a tape player that day, I could have recorded the stories that afternoon, wrote a book, and retired. It would have been wonderful, wonderful stories, because every time somebody's told one, somebody would have another one from another roundup or another political meeting or something that happened at home or happened on a train someplace. It was wonderful. And they were all true stories, and that's what made it so great. Jim deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for not only being a man of his time, but I would say a man for all times, and all the ranchers should appreciate him. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Wade Moser, and I don't have to probably add too much more than what Dean had said. Dean knew him probably better than most around here. All four of those gentlemen that were elected or being nominated for the hall were all four members of the North Dakota Stockmen's Association. And I had the fortunate pleasure of being able to work for that association for a long time. And I think Dean said a lot when he said at those meetings that if you'd had a tape recorder and sat there and listened to those guys, we should have recorded a lot of that stuff, because once they're gone, the stories are gone forever, and that's a sad deal. I didn't know Jim all that long. I started working for the Stockmen's Association back in 1983. And Jim had already kind of gone through the chairs and worked his way through the board and had been chairman of about everything there was and president of the Stockmen's Association. And then his health started getting bad on him. And the board of directors selected him for the Top Hand Award. The Top Hand Award for the North Dakota Stockmen's Association is the highest award that the association honors to anyone. And the association's been in existence for 86 years, and I don't think that award has been given out more than maybe 25 to maybe 30 times in the 86 years. So it's not something that's given away very lightly. Well, they selected Jim to receive that award in 1986 or 85, I believe it was, at the March board meeting, and we were going to give it to him that fall, and his health was going bad on him, so we decided to give it to him ahead of time. And he was in an apartment in Bismarck at the time, and really in poor health. And so Claire Michaels, who was the previous executive vice president, and I and the president of the board at the time went to his apartment with him and Phyllis and presented him with his award. And he had, as Dean said, I think he'd quit chewing by then, so he didn't have to lean over and spit anything. But he told us a few stories, and again, that's when I thought, you know, a lot of these guys, we got to start writing this stuff down, or it's gonna leave us. Jim was one of the only people that I knew of that was at the organizational meeting of the North Dakota Stockmen's Association. He traveled with the meeting to Watford City with his dad when he was 15 years old, and was involved basically as a rancher with his dad in organizing the association. So it was quite a story that he was telling us. And he told us a few other stories, and then he started to get a little tired. So we presented him an award, and if you haven't seen the award, it's about a foot-tall bust of a rancher holding a saddle and his hand on his hat. And it's quite a nice-looking award that you get. And we handed him the award, and he grabbed a hold of it and said a few more words, and then Phyllis said, well, I'll take that and put it for you. And he said, no, I think I'll hang on to this one for a while. And then he kind of fell asleep on us because he was tired, and I think it was probably less than a month later he passed away. But he was a great guy for the industry, as Dean had mentioned in his testimony of it, about what he'd been involved in, what it meant to him to be a cattleman in North Dakota, and he certainly contributed his time and effort to the industry, and we appreciate that. So thank you.